Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Mm.
Today we're looking at something pretty interesting. Those little grammar gremlins that trip up even native English speakers.
Mm-hmm.
We're using a great discussion from the Master English podcast as our starting point. Their episode was called Common Grammar Mistakes That Even Native Speakers Make.
Right, a really good one.
And our goal here for you listening is to, get the insights quickly, get those aha moments about English grammar, but without the textbook feel.
Exactly. No wading through dense rules.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? We tend to assume native speakers have perfect grammar,
Oh, absolutely. It's a total myth.
but the reality is quite different.
It really is. That podcast discussion does a great job busting that myth.
Yeah.
People who've spoken English their whole lives still make mistakes. Sometimes it's just a slip,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a pattern they've just picked up, maybe incorrectly. And sometimes, well, they might just not know the specific rule.
So we're going to unpack some of the big ones, the frequent errors.
That's the plan. We'll look at why they happen linguistically, psychologically, and maybe surprisingly, how learners can sometimes actually do better.
Okay, let's dive in. First up, a real classic,
Mm.
Between You and I.
The
The podcast told this story, remember? An Ivy League lawyer saying, between you and I, this case is, well, a mess.
Right. And it sounds kind of sophisticated, doesn't
It does. But it's wrong.
Mm.
It should be between you and me.
Yeah.
So why does this one stick around so much, even with, articulate people?
Well, one big reason they mention is just how we absorb language. If you hear between you and I often enough.
It just starts to sound normal.
Exactly. It gets baked in through repetition, even if it breaks the formal rule. It's like learning by osmosis, and sometimes the water is a bit murky, grammatically speaking.
Makes sense. Hear it, say it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also that psychological angle, the hypercorrection thing.
Yes. That's fascinating. People think you and I sounds more proper, more formal than you and me.
Right.
So they deliberately use you and I even when grammar needs the object form, me, like after between.
So trying too hard to be correct makes you incorrect.
Precisely. It's a great lesson, especially for learners. Don't just blindly copy. Understanding the actual principles is, well, much safer.
Okay, let's move to another super common one. Less versus fewer. I see this everywhere.
Oh, definitely. The classic example they use, the supermarket sign, 10 items or less.
Yeah. Drives me crazy. It should be fewer, right?
Technically, yes. Fewer is for things you can count individually. Items, people, chairs, whatever.
Okay. Countable things.
And less is for uncountable stuff, like water, sand, time, information, things you measure as a quantity, not by number.
So you'd say fewer people came because you can count people,
Correct.
but I need less information because information is uncountable.
Exactly. Or, I drank less water. Perfect.
So why do people get it wrong so often? Why is less used for countable stuff all the time?
Well, the podcast suggested it's probably because less just feels, easier or more common in casual chat.
Like a default.
Kind of. It's shorter, maybe feels more general. Our brains might just grab the simpler option in fast speech, ignoring the countability nuance.
Interesting. Okay, next up. Another minefield. I versus me.
Ah, yes. The subject-object confusion.
The podcast had those great examples, like my friend and me went to the movie, which we know should be.
My friend and I, subject of the verb went.
Right, but then the twist, he gave the ticket to my friend and I, which is also wrong.
Also wrong, because it should be to my friend and me. Me is the object of the preposition to.
So what's going on? Why the mix-up both ways?
Again, it seems to come back to that psychological thing. People get corrected on my friend and me went so often.
That they think I is always the more proper choice.
Pretty much. They overcorrect and start using I even when it's the object. That drive to sound formal strikes again.
Okay. But there's a good trick for this, right?
Yeah, a really simple one they mentioned. Just take the other person out of the sentence mentally. So for my friend and I may went, just think I may went. Well, me went is obviously wrong. So it has to be I went, which means it's my friend and I went.
Simple. And for the other one,
Yeah.
he gave the ticket to my friend and I.
Take out my friend. You're left with he gave the ticket to I. He gave the ticket to I? Sound right.
Nope. Sounds terrible.
Right. It has to be he gave the ticket to me. So the full sentence is he gave the ticket to my friend and me.
That's actually brilliant.
Yeah.
So clear. I like their point about authenticity, too.
Right.
Just speak clearly. Don't try to force complex stuff that isn't right.
Totally agree. Okay, let's switch gears. Double negatives.
Oh, yeah. I don't know nothing. Or maybe she ain't ever done that.
Exactly. And logically, as the podcast pointed out, Two negatives make a positive.
So I don't know nothing technically means I know something.
Mathematically, yes, like minus times minus equals plus.
But, and this is important, the podcast also mentioned the cultural side, right? Dialects.
Crucial point. In some varieties of English, like AAVE or some UK regional dialects, double negatives are perfectly grammatical. They follow rules, they have specific meanings, they're not just errors.
That's key. It's not universally wrong.
Not universally, no. But in what we call standard English, the kind you'd use in formal writing or professional settings, they are generally considered incorrect or non-standard.
So the standard alternatives would be,
I don't know anything, or I know nothing. For the other one, she has never done that, or she hasn't never done that.
got it. So the takeaway is really about knowing your audience, knowing the context.
Absolutely. Casual speech has more flexibility, but in formal situations, standard grammar is usually the expectation. Casual doesn't mean careless.
Okay, let's talk about a word that's, well, it's had quite a journey. Literally.
Oh, literally, yes. The podcast really nailed this one. It gets used so
Yeah.
liberally now.
People say I literally died laughing or my head literally exploded.
And, obviously they didn't. Their heart is still beating, their head is intact.
So the original meaning is actually, factually, without exaggeration.
Precisely. Exactly as stated. But what we're seeing, as the podcast explained, is semantic drift. The word's meaning is changing in popular use.
So now it often just means really or very, or it's used for emphasis.
Yeah, it signals strong feeling or intensity, even if the situation is figurative.
So should we just stop using it?
The advice was more about conscious usage. Think, do I actually mean literally, or do I just mean very, really, or I felt intensely?
So maybe say, I was really hungry instead of literally starving.
Exactly. Or I was so embarrassed I felt like I could die. Using more precise words is usually clearer.
And there was that point about respecting the language and the listener.
Yeah, being precise shows you care about clear communication. It's a subtle thing, but important.
Okay, brace yourselves. Who versus whom?
Dun dun dun, the one everyone dreads.
The podcast framed it well. Who should I call versus whom should I call? They also noted that lots of native speakers just avoid whom now.
They really do. Who is taking over in many contexts, especially informal ones.
Often that's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is a rule.
There is. Basically, who is the subject, the doer? Whom is the object, the receiver of the action or the object of a preposition?
And there's another test for this one too, like the I may trick.
Yep. Yeah, a him test. If you can substitute he or she, use who. If you can substitute him or her, use whom.
Okay, let's try whom should I call? The answer is I should call him, so.
So it should be whom should I call? Because him is the object form.
Got it. And whom is calling? The answer is he is calling.
So it's who is calling because he is the subject form.
Okay, that helps. But the podcast also said using whom can sound a bit stuffy sometimes.
It definitely can. Outside of very formal writing, like academic papers or legal documents, whom can sound overly formal, maybe even pretentious to some ears. So context and formality level are really key here.
Makes sense. Let's move to subject-verb agreement, making the verb match the subject.
Right. Singular subject, singular verb, plural subject, plural verb. Seems simple, but
It trips people up. The podcast used there's many reasons.
super common one. It should be there are many reasons because reasons is plural.
Why does theirs happen so often then?
It's easy to just start with theirs as a fixed phrase almost, and then forget to check if the noun coming later is plural. Your brain's moved on.
Like autopilot.
Kind of. Same with here's the documents. Should be here are the documents. Documents is plural.
The podcast mentioned some language science stuff, like our brains defaulting to simpler forms.
Yeah, the idea that in fast speech we might default to the singular verb form because it's maybe cognitively easier or quicker, but when we write, we should catch it.
So the fix is slow down, find the real subject, and make the verb match its number. Singular or plural.
That's the core of it. Identify the subject first.
Okay, final mistake area. Run-on sentences.
The enemy of clarity. The podcast called them silent saboteurs.
I like that. They gave that example. I love grammar. It helps people understand each other better. I think it's important. It just keeps going.
Exactly. You read it and you run out of breath. A run-on basically jams two or more complete sentences, independent clauses, together without the right punctuation or joining words.
No periods, no semicolon, no and or but.
Right. And the fix is usually straightforward. Break it up.
Yeah.
The podcast showed, I love grammar. Full stop. It helps people understand each other better. Full stop. I think it's important.
Much better. Instantly clearer. Each idea gets its space.
And they made a great point about perception. Long sentences don't automatically equal smart writing.
Right. Sometimes people think complex sentences sound intelligent.
But often, clarity comes from shorter, well-structured sentences. The podcast suggested thinking of punctuation like commas, periods,
Yeah.
as mental breathing spaces for the reader.
That's a really good way to put it. Mental pauses?
Yeah, lets the ideas sink in.
So we've covered a lot of ground here looking at these common errors native speakers make, drawing heavily from that great Master English podcast discussion.
We have, and the big takeaway, really, is that it's okay. Making mistakes is human.
It doesn't mean you're bad at English.
Not at all. And for anyone listening, whether you're learning or just refining your English, the aim isn't perfection. It can't be.
It's more about awareness, clarity.
Exactly. Awareness of these pitfalls, striving for clarity, and just connecting better through communication.
The podcast left us with some interesting questions to ask when we hear a mistake, didn't it?
Yeah, like, was that intentional? Did it actually make things unclear? Or did it maybe even serve a purpose for the speaker?
Good questions. Because grammar isn't just about rigid rules.
Right, it's a tool. A tool for expressing ourselves clearly, confidently, not for sounding like a robot.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is to reflect a bit. Think about the grammar you hear, the grammar you use.
Yeah, consider that interplay. The podcast touched on the rhythm of speech, the reasoning behind the rules, and the reality of how we actually communicate. It's all connected.